My wife passed away on a Tuesday, and by Friday, my daughter had already changed the locks on our house. Not our house anymore. Her house. That's what the will said. Lorraine had spent 41 years building Morrison tile and stone into something real, regional contracts, a reputation that stretched from Knoxville all the way to Nashville. And when the attorney read the terms out loud in that conference room, I watched my daughter's face go from grief to calculation in about 4 seconds flat. She got the business. The house in Brentwood. The investment accounts at Edward Jones, somewhere north of $4 million. The lake cabin up in Norris. I got a storage unit in rural Claiborne County that Lorraine had been renting for 11 years without ever once mentioning it to me. The attorney, a thin woman named Patricia Holt, who had clearly seen worse, slid a key across the table toward me. Old. Brass. The kind that belonged to a padlock, not a door. My daughter leaned forward. What's in it? The unit was registered solely in your mother's name, Patricia said. The contents transfer to your father per the will. A storage unit. My daughter sat back. She left him a storage unit. The way she said it, like I wasn't sitting right there, like I was already gone. I'm 67 years old. I taught high school history for 32 years at the same school in Jefferson City, Tennessee. I coached JV basketball for 12 of those years. I know what it looks like when a person has already written someone off. I've seen it in kids who stop trying. I know the exact expression. My daughter had it now. She turned to me. Dad, you should let me handle this. You're not in any shape to be dealing with storage units and legal paperwork. You just lost Mum. We both did, I said quietly. She didn't answer that. Patricia walked me to the door when it was over and pressed a second envelope into my hands. Lorraine's handwriting on the front. Open at the unit, sweetheart. Don't let anyone come with you. I drove home. Not home. To the house. I had 14 days. My daughter had handed me a letter on the way out of the attorney's office, typed and notarized, very official. She and her husband needed to begin the estate transition immediately. 14 days to gather my personal belongings. 14 days to figure out where 67 years of a life goes next. I sat in the guest room that night, already the guest room in my mind, even though Lorraine and I had slept in the bedroom at the end of the hall for 23 years. And I held the envelope and didn't open it. She had said to wait. I'd spent 41 years trusting Lorraine's instincts. I could wait one more night. My son-in-law knocked on the door frame around 9. He didn't come in. Just stood there with his arms folded, that look on his face like he was doing me a favor by existing near me. We've had some people reach out, he said. About the business. That was fast. Lorraine had competitors who'd been waiting a long time. He shrugged. Just letting you know we're going to move quickly on some things. You don't need to be involved. I wasn't planning to be. He nodded, started to leave. The tile contracts she had with Vanderbilt Medical, I said. She negotiated those herself. Took her 3 years. He stopped. She was proud of those, I said. Just so you know. He left without answering. I turned off the bedside lamp and lay in the dark, listening to the house. I could hear them down the hall, talking in low voices. My daughter's voice, and then her husband's, then my daughter again, faster. The way people talk when they're making plans, they don't want you to hear. The next morning, I started packing. Not everything, just my books, my winter coats, the framed photo of Lorraine from our trip to the Smoky Mountains in 2019. The last year she was healthy. She was laughing at something I had said, head tilted back. The peaks behind her grey and gold in the October light. On day 4, I came downstairs to find a woman I didn't know, measuring the kitchen cabinets. My daughter was standing by the window scrolling her phone. Who is that? I asked. Interior designer. She didn't look up. We're opening the kitchen up, taking out that wall. The wall she was pointing at was the one Lorraine had stenciled a border on. Vine pattern. It had taken her 3 weekends, and she'd been insufferably proud of it. We'd laughed about how crooked the corners were. I went back upstairs. On day 8, I found a manila folder in the recycling bin outside. My daughter had labeled it in her own handwriting, Dad, options. Inside were brochures for 2 assisted living facilities in Knox County, color photos of cheerful common rooms, smiling staff, menu rotations. One of them, Harmony Ridge Senior Living in Farragut, had a move-in date typed onto a printed intake form. My name was on it. The date was 3 weeks away. My daughter had signed the authorization line. She had done this before Lorraine died. The intake form was dated January 9th. Lorraine passed on January 22nd. I stood in the driveway for a long time. Then I photographed every page, put the folder back exactly as I'd found it, and went inside to finish packing. 3 days before I had to leave, my son-in-law came to find me in the garage. I was wrapping Lorraine's ceramic plant pots. She'd made them herself in a class she took at the Community Arts Center, each one different, in newspaper. "I've been thinking," he said. "The storage unit. It's probably just old furniture, boxes of stuff from before you two got married. You don't want to deal with all that." "It's mine," I said. I know. But if you wanted to just sign it over to us, we'd handle the clean-out. Give you a check for whatever it's worth. 10, 15,000. Make things simpler for everyone." I kept wrapping the pots. "Dad, I'll handle it myself," I said. "Thank you." That evening, I called Patricia Holt. She answered on the second ring. "I thought you might call," she said. I told her about the Harmony Ridge form, about the date. She was quiet for a moment. "Sam," she said. I hadn't told her to use my name, but somehow it felt right. "Your wife came to me 14 months before she passed. She spent those 14 months making sure you were protected. I can't tell you what's in that storage unit. She asked me not to, but I can tell you this. Don't sign anything. Not the power of attorney they tried to get you to sign, not a transfer of any property, not a sale agreement, nothing." "They haven't mentioned a power of attorney yet." "They will," she said. "And Sam," she anticipated everything. "Everything. Go to the unit, read the letter, then call me." I sat on the edge of the bed with the phone in my lap for a long time after she hung up. The drive to Claiborne County took about 90 minutes. I went on the morning of day 13. The storage facility was called Blue Ridge Self-Storage, which was optimistic. The mountains weren't visible from there at all. Just a long, flat lot, full of orange corrugated doors off Highway 25. The woman at the front desk looked up the unit, handed me a tipboard, and pointed me toward row 7. The unit was at the far end. Number 74. I slid the brass key into the padlock, and it turned on the first try. The door rolled up. I don't know what I expected. Old furniture, like my son-in-law had said. Boxes of junk. What I found was a filing cabinet, a folding table with 2 chairs, a battery-powered lantern on the table, and a small fireproof lockbox with a combination dial. On top of the lockbox was a note in Lorraine's handwriting. "The combination is our anniversary. Read the big envelope first." Propped against the filing cabinet was a large envelope, my name on the front. The same handwriting I'd seen on birthday cards and grocery lists, and notes tucked into my lunch bag for 3 decades. I sat down in one of the chairs, turned on the lantern. The light was too dim inside without it, and I opened the envelope. "Sam, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and our daughter has already started making plans for your life without asking you. I know her, I love her, and I know exactly what she's doing. There are 3 things you need to understand. First, the storage unit is not full of junk. The filing cabinet contains 14 months of documentation I put together with Patricia's help. Open it after you finish this letter. Second, our daughter and her husband have known for 2 years that the land I inherited from my grandmother in Harlan County, Kentucky, the 60 acres I transferred into your name 18 months ago, sits above a methane gas formation. There's a survey in the cabinet commissioned by a company called Redstone Energy out of Lexington. They approached our son-in-law directly. He never told me. I found out through Patricia, who found out through a title search I asked her to run. Third, I transferred that land to you in an irrevocable trust. Our daughter cannot touch it. No power of attorney, no guardianship petition, no court order. None of it will work. Patricia has copies of everything. The trust is ironclad. The lockbox holds $60,000 in cashier's checks and a USB drive. The drive has copies of every document in the filing cabinet, plus communications between our son-in-law and Redstone Energy that I obtained with the help of a business attorney in Lexington named Gideon Walsh. Call him. His card is taped to the inside of the lockbox lid. Go to the land, Sam. The address is in the top drawer of the filing cabinet. There's a cabin there. I paid to have it winterized last fall. You'll have water, heat, and power. I'm sorry I couldn't explain this while I was alive. Some of it I couldn't prove until the last few months. Some of it would have broken your heart to hear while you were watching me get sicker. I love you more than I ever found the right words for. I'm sorry about that too. Trust the land. I always did. Lorraine, I read the letter twice. My hands weren't shaking, which surprised me. I felt very still, the way you feel in the minutes right after something large and heavy falls. I opened the top drawer of the filing cabinet. The first folder was labeled Redstone Energy Communication Log. Inside were printouts of emails between my son-in-law and a man named Dale Croftwood, Regional Acquisitions Director for Redstone. The earliest was dated March of 2022. Lorraine had been diagnosed in September of that year. I'm reading through these quickly. The core of it, Croftwood had approached my son-in-law at a regional real estate conference. He knew about the Harlan County land. Lorraine's family name was on old mineral rights records, and he knew what was under it. He told my son-in-law the estimated recoverable value was somewhere between $8 and $14 million. The conversation moved to email within a week. My son-in-law wrote back, "The land is currently in my mother-in-law's name. Her health is declining. Once she passes, the estate will transfer to my wife. We can move quickly after that." Lorraine had underlined that sentence in red ink and written one word beside it. Before. He'd written that email 6 months before she was diagnosed. The next folder was labeled Trust Documents. Irrevocable. I didn't read all of it. I read enough to understand the structure. The land was mine, fully and legally, with protections in place that Lorraine had spent 14 months building. Section 9 of the trust document contained something Patricia had apparently called the integrity clause. If my daughter or her husband attempted any legal action to contest the trust or obtain control of the Harlan County property, or entered into any agreement with Redstone Energy or any affiliated entity, they would forfeit the business assets Lorraine had left them and expose themselves to civil fraud liability. The third folder was thicker. My daughter, it turned out, had used a joint credit card Lorraine didn't know about. Lorraine's name, her signature, but the account opened at a branch in Brentwood, where Lorraine never banked, to make $43,000 in purchases over 18 months. Statement copies highlighted. Patricia's note clipped to the top. Material evidence of financial fraud. Criminal exposure for both parties. I closed the folder. I sat in that folding chair in the half-dark of the storage unit for a long time. Outside I could hear traffic on Highway 25, an occasional truck, the wind picking up. Cold for March in East Tennessee, but not brutal. Lorraine would have called it good sweater weather. She had known our daughter was stealing from her while she was sick. She had documented it, and she had never said a word to me, because she knew it would have sent me out that door with nothing accomplished, and everything worse. She had built a wall around me instead. Quietly, carefully, with Patricia's help, over 14 months, while she was fighting cancer, and she had left me standing safely on the other side of it. I opened the lockbox. The combination was June 14th, 1984, the day we got married at the courthouse in Jefferson City with her mother and my brother watching. No reception, no big dinner. We went to the Cracker Barrel afterward and laughed about it for years. Inside, a bundle of cashier's checks rubber-banded together, a USB drive in a small plastic case, and taped to the inside of the lid, a business card. Gideon Walsh, Walsh & Associates, Lexington, KY, with a cell number handwritten at the bottom. I took a photo of it. Then I loaded everything back into the filing cabinet, locked the unit, and drove. The Harlan County land took 2.5 hours. I'd driven through that part of Kentucky before, years ago, with Lorraine when she was showing me where she'd grown up. I remembered how the hills closed in around the road, the way the hollers went deep and quiet, the old home place signs that still marked properties that had been in the same family for generations. The address she'd left me took me down a gravel road off Route 38. The cabin was small. 2 rooms, a porch, a wood stove, electricity from a pole at the road. Lorraine had gotten it winterized, which meant there was water pressure when I turned the valve and the lights came on when I hit the switch. The porch faced west over 60 acres of ridge and timber, the kind of land that people in cities imagine when they talk about Kentucky and mean it as a compliment. There was a note on the kitchen table in Lorraine's handwriting. I knew you'd make it. I put the note in my breast pocket and called Gideon Walsh. He picked up on the 3rd ring. "Mr. Whitfield," he said, "not a question. He was expecting me. She told you I'd call." "She did. She also told me approximately when." He paused. "I'm sorry for your loss. She was one of the most prepared clients I've ever worked with." We talked for 40 minutes. He laid out the situation with the kind of unhurried clarity that told me he'd explained it before, probably to Lorraine, probably more than once, making sure she understood every layer. The land was mine. The trust was clean. Redstone Energy had filed 2 preliminary inquiries with the county clerk's office in Harlan over the past 14 months. Lorraine had caught both through a monitoring service she'd set up, but neither had advanced because the land title showed a private, irrevocable trust that blocked any third-party transaction without the trustee's consent. The trustee was Gideon himself. "What does Redstone actually want?" I asked. "Gas extraction rights. The formation under your property is part of a larger shale deposit that runs under several parcels in that area. Most of the adjacent landowners have already signed lease agreements. Your 60 acres is what I've started calling the anchor parcel." He cleared his throat. "Without it, the extraction infrastructure can't go in efficiently. With it, the project becomes significantly more profitable. They need you. How much are we talking about?" He was quiet for a moment. "Lorraine didn't want me to give you that number over the phone. She asked me to meet with you in person and go through the proposal documents together. But I can tell you the royalty agreement she had drafted, the one we present as a counter to whatever Redstone puts on the table, puts you at 65% of net extraction revenue, with all operational costs on their side. What does 65% look like? Conservatively, in the range of $800,000 to $1.2 million annually, for somewhere between 15 and 25 years, depending on the field." I sat down on the cabin's front step. "Mr. Walsh." "Gideon is fine. My daughter doesn't know about any of this." "No, and that's by design." His voice was level. "Lorraine's concern was that any advance disclosure would trigger exactly the behavior you've probably already seen. She wanted you to have the full picture before anyone else had the chance to pressure you into making decisions." After the call, I walked to the property. 60 acres isn't large enough to get lost in, but in that country it feels bigger than it is. The terrain rolls. There are stands of hardwood along the ridgeline. A creek that runs through the lower section that I found by following the sound. Lorraine had told me once that her grandmother used to fish that creek. I never thought much about it. I stood by the water for a while. It was cold enough that my breath came out in long clouds. A hawk was working a thermal somewhere above the tree line. Lorraine had driven out here, sick and tired, and keeping all of it quiet, and she had walked this same ground and decided it was worth protecting. I went back to the cabin and made a list of everything I needed to do. My daughter called that evening. I let it ring. She called again at 9 p.m. and at 9:40. The 3rd time, she left a voicemail. "Dad, I don't know what you're thinking running off like this, but we need to talk about the storage unit. There are things in there that belong to the estate. You need to come back so we can go through it properly. With a lawyer, if you don't respond by tomorrow, I'm going to have to take steps." I listened to it twice. Then I called Patricia Holt. She wasn't surprised. She left a voicemail. Mentioned steps. That means her husband has talked to someone. An attorney, probably. One who doesn't know the trust structure yet. She paused. "Sam, do not engage. Don't call her back. Don't meet with her without me present. If she files anything, any petition, any motion, the integrity clause triggers immediately. She loses the business and the accounts, and they both face civil fraud exposure for the credit card." She said it quietly, the way you say something that's both true and unfortunate. Lorraine gave her a choice. She just doesn't know it yet. Gideon drove up 2 days later with a leather briefcase and a calm demeanor that matched Patricia's exactly. I was starting to understand why Lorraine had trusted these particular people. They moved through complicated situations without drama, which I suspected was exactly what Lorraine had looked for. We sat at the kitchen table with the proposal documents and a pot of coffee and went through everything. The agreement Lorraine had negotiated with Redstone, not finalized, not signed, but drafted to her specifications, was more favorable than anything the adjacent landowners had accepted. 65% of net revenue, 4 surface rights retained, a 30-year cap, and an indemnification clause that held Redstone liable for any land restoration costs at the end of extraction. It was, Gideon said mildly, almost unheard of. She knew the business side, I said. She'd spent 40 years in the materials industry. She understood what leverage looked like. He turned a page. She also knew that Redstone's expansion timeline was constrained. They've committed to infrastructure investment in that county that only makes financial sense if this parcel is included. She used that. When would income start? Drilling operations roughly 14 to 18 months from signature. Royalty payments quarterly after that. He looked up. In the interim, the trust includes a provision, a fund she built over the last 2 years from her personal accounts. $2,000 a month, beginning 30 days from now, for as long as the main agreement takes to generate income. I put my coffee cup down. She set up a stipend. She called it the holding account. Gideon smiled slightly. Her words were, "Tell him it's not charity, it's logistics." I laughed. I hadn't laughed in weeks. It sounded strange in the cabin's small kitchen. That afternoon my son-in-law showed up. I heard his car on the gravel and came out onto the porch. He stepped out of a black Jeep wearing the expression he always wore when he was trying to look reasonable. "Your daughter's worried," he said. "She could have called me herself." He came to the foot of the porch steps. "We need to talk about the contents of that storage unit. There's nothing to discuss." "There are documents in there that relate to estate property." He said it carefully, the way someone says something they've rehearsed. "The attorney we spoke with says there could be grounds for what?" He stopped. "Say it," I said. "What are the grounds?" He shifted his weight. "We're concerned about your mental state. You just lost your wife. You drove 2.5 hours to a property you've never seen. You're not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking clearly enough to remember January 9th, I said. His expression changed. "That's the date on the Harmony Ridge intake form," I said. "The one my daughter signed 2 weeks before Lorraine died." He said nothing. "I've got a photograph of it," I said, "along with a photograph of the credit card statements and the emails to Dale Croftwood." I watched his face go through several things quickly. "You should go." He stood there for another moment. "Tell my daughter I hope she makes the right choice," I said. "She still has time to." He got back in the Jeep. The gravel popped under his tires as he turned around and left. I went inside and called Patricia. "He came in person," I said. "I know. He called my office this morning and asked for the trust documentation. I told him I represent the trustee and referred him to his own attorney." She paused. "Sam, they're going to file something, maybe an incompetency petition, maybe a will contest. Either way, the integrity clause activates the moment it's filed. My daughter loses the business." Everything her mother left her. I was quiet. "It's her choice," Patricia said, not unkindly. "Lorraine knew it would be. That's why she built it this way. She couldn't make your daughter into a different person. She could only make sure you were protected regardless of which choice she made." 2 days passed. On the 3rd morning, my phone rang at 8 a.m. "My daughter." I answered. She was crying before she got the first sentence out, which startled me, because my daughter doesn't cry easily. She is her mother's child in that way. "Dad." Her voice was thin. "Grayson's attorney called us last night. He told us about the trust. About the clause." A breath. "He told us what would happen if we filed. I didn't say anything." "I didn't know about the emails," she said, "between Grayson and that Redstone person. I didn't know he'd been talking to them. I still didn't say anything. Mum knew. She found out, I said, about 14 months before she died. A long silence. The Harmony Ridge form, she said quietly. That was Grayson. He pushed for it. I knew it was wrong. I went along with it because he said it was the practical thing. She stopped. That's not an excuse. No, I said. It's not. She cried for a while. I listened. I'm not filing anything, she said finally. Neither is Grayson. We're not contesting anything. Okay. I'd like to see you when you're ready. I thought about Lorraine at the conference table in January, setting up the holding account, the way she would have thought about this exact phone call, this exact moment, and tried to account for it. Give me some time, I said. I'll reach out when I'm ready. After I hung up, I sat on the front porch with a cup of coffee and looked out at the ridge. The timber was still winter bare, but if you knew where to look, you could see the first hints of green coming up through the leaf litter on the southern slope. 3 weeks later, Gideon was back. Redstone's regional director drove up from Lexington with a corporate attorney and the finalized proposal. We sat at the kitchen table and went through it. They'd accepted every term Lorraine had specified, 65%. Full surface rights. Indemnification clause. The regional director, a blunt, efficient man who clearly respected the deal because he had no choice but to, shook my hand at the end and said, "Your wife was a tough negotiator. She worked in tile and stone for 40 years, I said. She knew what she was doing. Drilling operations were estimated to begin that fall. I spent the spring fixing up the cabin. Earl Walsh, Gideon's nephew as it happened, who'd been doing maintenance on the property for Lorraine for the past 2 years, helped me put in proper gutters, repair the porch decking, and run a water line to a small outbuilding I decided to turn into a workshop. Earl was in his 50s, quiet, competent, the kind of man who showed up when he said he would. We got along. She came out here a lot in those last months, he told me one afternoon. We were eating sandwiches on the porch, said she needed to think. We just walked the property for an hour, sometimes 2. Did she say anything to you? He thought about it. Once. She said the hardest part wasn't being sick, it was knowing she couldn't be here to make sure things went right. He looked out at the ridge. I told her things generally go right if you set them up properly. She said that's exactly what I'm doing. I signed the Redstone agreement in May. Drilling started in October. The first royalty check arrived the following September, 2 weeks before my 69th birthday. I sat at the kitchen table and held it for a long time before I deposited it. Lorraine had established a donor-advised fund with Patricia's help during those 14 months. The paperwork was in the filing cabinet, already structured, already waiting for funding. She'd had ideas, a scholarship fund for vocational and trade students in Claiborne and Harlan counties, the kind of kids who were good with their hands and had no way to pay for certification programs. She'd written 3 pages of notes about it in a yellow legal pad I found in the bottom drawer. I funded it the week after the first royalty check cleared. I named it the Lorraine Morrison Whitfield Fund, which embarrassed me a little because she would have hated the fuss. But it was her vision and her money that started it, and I wanted people to know that. The first round of scholarships went out in the spring. 12 of them, $2,000 each, to students in welding, HVAC, plumbing, electrical. The awards ceremony was at the community college in Harlan, a Tuesday afternoon in April. I drove up for it. I watched 12 young people walk to the front of a cafeteria and accept envelopes from a foundation that hadn't existed 2 years ago. A kid named Terrence, 18 years old, wanted to do HVAC, had been working at his uncle's repair shop since he was 14. Shook my hand and said, "Thank you," and I almost couldn't say "you're welcome," because my throat had closed up. I managed it. On the drive back through the mountains, the sun was low and the hills were turning gold and green in that particular way. They do in late April in eastern Kentucky, and I thought about Lorraine standing at the creek in winter with her breath coming out in clouds, deciding this land was worth protecting. She'd been right about the land. She'd been right about most things. She was right about our daughter, too, in the end. Not the choice she made initially, but the one she made when she finally understood what the choice actually was. We've had dinner twice now, my daughter and I. without her husband, at a restaurant halfway between Knoxville and where I live now. It's not what it was. It may never be what it was, but she's trying, and I'm giving her the chance to try, which is a different thing from forgiving someone and a more honest thing, I think, than pretending. Her husband sold his stake in the business and moved to Atlanta. The business is struggling without Lorraine, though I don't say that to my daughter. I'm 68 now. I wake up most mornings to the sound of the creek if the window is open, which I keep open as late into the fall as I can stand. Earl comes by twice a week. The drilling operation is quiet. I see the equipment on the far ridge sometimes, and I hear it occasionally if the wind is right, but it doesn't intrude. The royalty checks are steady. The scholarship fund has helped 31 students in 2 years. I wrote Lorraine a letter last January, on the anniversary. I put it in the filing cabinet next to her letters because that felt like the right place for it. I told her about the scholarship fund and about Terence, who sent me a text last fall to say he'd passed his certification exam and gotten hired. I told her Earl's wife makes better cornbread than either of us ever did, and she would have liked her. I told her I was fine, which was true, and that I missed her, which was truer. I told her the land was everything she said it was. I go down to the creek most evenings when the weather holds. There's a flat rock where the bank curves that's almost exactly wide enough to sit on if you don't mind getting your boots a little muddy. Lorraine would have found it and claimed it immediately. She had a talent for finding the best spot in any place she went. I sit there and watch the water, and I think about the 41 years and the 14 months, and the key on a conference table and the drive through the mountains, and how none of it looked at the start like it was going to come to this. But it did, because she knew it would. She planned for it. She built the walls and left me the door, and trusted me to walk through it. I try to be worthy of that. Most days I think I am.